Actually, I like that question a lot because of the how. And I have to say right away that I've done this by collaborating with urban designers and urban planners. So my thinking in this area is very much a part of a dialogue with those professionals and practitioners. I have tried to bring ecological thinking about the dynamics of space into the dialogue with urban planners and designers. And so what that means is that I think about cities as patchworks, and they're patchworks layered of many kinds. So there's the built environment, there are the buildings, there are the roads, there's the infrastructure, but there's also a landscape or a patchwork of policy and regulations and norms. And then, of course, there's a layer that deals with people's social difference in class and ethnicity and so on. And then finally, there's a layer that pulls out the green, the ecological parts of cities, what's going on in terms of nutrient cycling and regulation of climate and flows of water. And so I've tried to deal with planning from those perspectives, pulling that all together, thinking about cities as patchworks that are both physical, biological, and social. And I've found a great deal of sympathy in the planning professions and design professions for those kinds of views. In fact, planners and designers are some of the most spatially aware people that I know. So there's a lot of sympathy, and it's a really great way to have that dialogue and get these ecological thoughts into planning theory and planning practice. One of the things that I can point to there is some of the long-term work that I've been involved in Baltimore. And that's a big team of people and a big metropolitan area, 5 counties plus the city of Baltimore. And one of the things that people in cities have been thinking is that to improve the quality of water in streams, to reduce the runoff from the surfaces, the impervious surfaces into streams, that one of the things that you can do is plant trees, plant vegetation in the riparian zones, the zones right along the streams. And it's been found in the wild and in agricultural situations that vegetation right along streams is crucially important to reducing the pollution that gets into streams. What we found in Baltimore, which has been found in other cities as well now, surprised us. We found that the riparian areas weren't actually performing that expected function because the water tables had been drawn down because of the way that water is piped from the surfaces into the streams. And so that meant that when we had a dialogue with the city managers and policymakers, they said, wow, this is a big surprise. What do we do about this? And so together we came up with the idea, well, let's think about the whole city as a riparian zone. Let's think about the whole city as something you could design to absorb water, to slow down runoff, to capture excess nitrogen and that sort of thing. And so that's one of the things that was one of our first discoveries. And in fact, in many cities, people have been doing that. It's an official policy in Baltimore and in the state of Maryland. They now use the methods that we used to discover these kinds of things in Baltimore and use them throughout the state. Another thing that has happened in our research is discovering that green infrastructure, which we all think is a really useful thing in cities. You have to be very careful that green infrastructure doesn't put some people at a disadvantage. There's sometimes when green infrastructure is installed and it's put under the control or the management of communities. Well, that's fine if you're dealing with a wealthy community where people have lots of time. It's not such a good thing if you're dealing with a community where people have multiple jobs, they don't have a lot of time to devote to managing the local green space. So we have pointed to the idea that equitability of how you manage green space has to be accounted for. So it's not just the ecology, but it's the fairness of how green infrastructure is being practiced. So those are two examples of how the research that I've been involved in has improved or changed how management, design, planning actually goes on in cities. That is a really, really important question. Right now, if you look at cities around the world, you see that they're really designed for cars. They're designed for automobiles, for the convenience of motorized transport. And I think we need to flip that around and really to think about cities as being not only places that have to move materials and people around efficiently, but also in places in which biology has to function, biodiversity has to prosper and perform functions that are useful for climate control, water control, and even for people's health, psychologically and, say, heat stress are two big reasons. So I think we need to sort of turn around our order of what we think about when we design cities. Design cities first for people and nature together. Let the transport, let the sort of physical efficiency or the moving around of things be lower down in the list. Not absent from the list, but I think we need to reorder the priority so that we get cities to have joint ecological, social, and engineering qualities. That's, I think, a really good way to do it.